So we got
He
another
doesn't
one
use
next,
mine.
next month. We
Yeah,
don't
the
know.
way, I mean, they're mechanics, which is unreal.
Yeah.
haven't
We'll end to
heard
see something different.
Now, do you play it all?
Not
from
well.
me.
Yeah.
And not often.
Play at it.
Yeah. We go, my brother-in-law and my nephews go. We've gone the last 3 years, so at the Wells Fargo. And then we shoot PGA.
Everybody ready?
No.
Here, then. Okay, I'm gonna bang us in. I'd like to bring this meeting to order. Southern Shores Planning Board, May 19, 2025. If you all will please stand with me and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Approval of the agenda. I don't think anything needs to be added, does it? Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda of May 19th, 2025.
Thank you, Tony. Second.
Second.
Jan, seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Public comment?
Yes, sir, we have someone signed up.
All right.
This is what Sheila does.
Thank you. Let's see, I can't read the writing. Elizabeth Moray, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Elizabeth Morey. I live at 59 Gene Guide Trail. I'm glad to be here with y'all tonight. The reason I'm here is simply to say thank you. I can't, I'm the one that did serve on the planning board for some amount of years, and I know how hard the job is, and you all have really been put to work over the last couple years. And I just don't get a chance to thank you enough. So I come tonight to thank you on behalf of myself and also on behalf of the town of Southern Shores for all that you do for our community. And you get a t-shirt.
Oh.
I was gonna ask that pizza.
We have a variety of sizes.
Great. Look at that.
Let's see, medium possibly for Jane, let's see.
Sure.
It's big enough.
Oh, I'm sure I can make it fit.
And then, we have,
Southern Shores, very nice.
Here.
Ah,
multiple XLs, I'm assuming it would be.
Yes,
and the flat top.
that's a safe
Isn't that
assumption.
great?
Oh, no.
Oh,
Cool.
no.
That's all right.
Excellent.
I'll use my t-shirt.
Let's see,
I'm an XL for sure.
are you an XL for sure?
Mhm.
I got more.
Tony, are
Thank
you an L?
I'm an L.
I got you an L, look at this. These are cool shirts.
Yeah, they
Oh,
are.
that's a new office. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Excellent.
XL. I'm thinking XL.
XL,
I got some paper towels.
got it. Robert,
L, please.
L for Robert.
Do we have to wear them every
Need a hand?
meeting now?
Only in certain times.
Only
Only.
Tony.
These
Oh,
are
it's
nice.
okay. It's okay.
I really think y'all
I read it all.
will enjoy using them.
Heck yeah,
So,
thanks.
as
Great
a
design.
small but meaningful token of our sincere appreciation for everything you do.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Appreciate the kind words.
Yes.
Okay. All right. It's the best kind of public comment right there.
Gifts.
Old business is none. New business is ZTA 25-03. And Wes, can I call on you to just, you can paraphrase or you can read us the staff report and tell us why we're here tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This application is ZTA-25-03, and this is an application being brought by town staff. And we are proposing to amend Town Code Section 36-300. This is a result of town council direction at the May 6, 2025 meeting to modernize the town code. As y'all can recall, last year, I think it was last 2024 February, they gave the same direction. So we asked for that recently, and they gave us that direction to make propose amendments to the town code to modernize it. And this is one example of modernization. And it's kind of funny, actually, you all recall that we approved the ZTA last year, ZTA 2401, that took out and redid Section 36-300, which addresses special use permits. And what we did there were many amendments or sections that were changed in ZTA-2401, but this is one of them. And in that case, we were following the statutes. What the statutes say, 160D with respect to special use permits. And the town attorney nor I, when we were discussing this, we both kind of just shook our heads saying, why did we, this should have stayed in. These guiding standards should have stayed in the ordinance. Not too long ago, the Dare County Planning Director reached out to me and said, do you all have guiding standards in your special use permit requirements? And I said, we used to. And he shared with me an article with out of School of Government, Professor David Owens, that was included in your packets that states why, recommending, advising that we should include guiding standards in our ordinance for granting for special use permit decisions. So what we are proposing in ZTA-2503 is to reestablish the same four guiding standards that were in Section 36-300 prior to adoption of ZTA-2401, in addition to a new standard that was included in the recommended language from the School of Government that addresses or just states that the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining property unless the use is a public necessity. So essentially, this text amendment reestablishes guiding standards for the town council when making decisions on special use permits. And Chairperson Ward, you asked me to also send in the packets there were some other changes that were included in ZTA-2401, which revised the powers and duties for the planning board. And I included that in your packets as well, what the code used to say with respect to the planning board's powers and duties with respect to special use permits prior to and following adoption of ZTA-2401. So the way the code reads now with respect to special use permits, the board reviews them, and it states to provide a preliminary forum for review of special use permit applications, provided that no part of the forum or recommendation may be used as a basis for town council decisions. So that's what we're proposing tonight. If you all have any questions, I can try to answer them.
Pretty straightforward to me. Anybody have any questions of Wes? We'll look over the ZTA. I had a couple of questions, I guess. And I mean, we're just as remiss as you and the attorney as far as, I mean, granted, ZTA 2401 was a long piece. There was a lot of stuff in there. But I'm not quite sure how that slipped by, all of us up here and you and Lauren, but.
Yeah, like I said, we were following what was in the statutes. And also, this was not long after we had received a special use permit application from the developer, the owner of the Gene Guyte property next to Southern Shores Landing. So we were kind of more focused on procedure, I think, not not including these standards, but either way, yeah, they should have been left in there, but we were focused more on what the statute said and kind of reflecting on what we went through with respect to that application that we had,
Yeah.
that process we'd gone through.
What precipitated E from getting, I mean, what got that in there with the other four?
So in the article that I included in your packets, special use permits need for adequate guiding standards. It's addressed in there. Professor Owens addresses it. Let's see, I can refer to that if you'd like.
Yeah, I was just kind of making a statement. David Owens had that one in there.
Yes. We're just following their advice.
Let's look over the, if y'all will turn over to the actual ZTA from town staff, page 2. There is additional language in number 12 where it just says on line 2 of number 12, to ensure the use is in conformity with this article. On line 15, maybe 16, conditions and safeguards imposed under this subsection shall not include requirements for which the town does not have authority under statute to regulate. Would that be something like a wastewater treatment plant?
I'm not sure about that. I think this is more in line with saying, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something. I think it's to prevent an unreasonable condition.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think it does say too, the end of that sentence, have held to be unenforceable if imposed directly by the town. I think the town in that case is imposing requirements not directly, but also by other entities.
Right, like I think if, for a special use permit, if the town said, we want to add a condition that you have to send us a report every 6 months or something like that, I mean, might be an example.
And then there's it goes on to mention that building design elements might fall in that category of regulation. I'm assuming that we're okay with 160D as far as our design standards, commercial design standards.
So currently, they are not enforceable due to legislation that was adopted in 2024 that was retroactive 6 months. When we adopted the commercial design standards, it falls in that window of one of the bills passed in 2024.
Of not being enforceable.
Correct.
So is that forever, or
Right.
possibility of new legislation taking some of that language out exist?
We're hoping at some point that it would be lifted.
What piece do you think that falls under?
I can't remember the bill number.
Well, it's 382.
Yeah.
But it's not a use. It's not making anything non-conforming.
Would it not make it non-conforming if they can't meet the commercial design requirements?
No, because they're applicable after the fact on new applications, not on existing buildings. If you have an existing building that doesn't meet the design standards, I wouldn't consider that non-conforming. I wouldn't think. And I'm trying to think of the third piece. The third piece was, oh man, I'll have to look it up.
What about traffic reports?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bad example. I mean, we probably, that I would say that would not be an unreasonable condition.
Because we know we need it, but they say you can't get it until.
Yeah, a traffic impact assessment, I mean, that was a bad example. That probably could be included.
So is there something that we as a planning board can do for design standards? And I mean, is there a way of moving that to another part of like this CTA so that it can be enforceable?
I would have to go back and look at this legislation. When last time I looked at it, I remember writing down and making a note that that part was subject to that bill. And I don't have it in front of me. If you all want, I can go next door to my office and go get that information, but I just don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, so the other piece was decreasing the development density. The second was reducing permitted uses. The third was by creating any type of nonconformity. But you could just change, I mean, hopefully that stuff gets thrown out, the downzoning, it gets changed. But even if it doesn't, you could explicitly say that properties that don't currently comply with the design standards are not considered nonconforming, and that they apply to projects that are applied for after the fact and building components.
Your grandfather did.
Well, you don't even have to worry about them being grandfathered because you're explicitly not calling them non-conforming. But yeah, it's
But
similar.
for new development, you get a new application, we can't say you have to meet these requirements because then they would be non-conforming.
No, you can. If someone's proposing a new building, yeah, you can.
Design standards.
Absolutely. They're not subject to that provision.
Even though they would not be conforming.
So you don't have a non-conforming, you've not made something non-conforming, is the way it works. So so when you adopted those regulations, I don't know that anyone in here viewed them as taking an existing building because it didn't meet the design standards and rendering it non-conforming for that part. For instance, if someone had an existing building, you wouldn't call that a non-conforming use or a non-conforming structure. It's because it didn't meet design standards.
There was a provision in there that said if you make improvements greater than 50% of the value, they had to be brought into compliance.
You may want to look at that.
Yeah. So,
I mean, there's ways that you can tweak it to comply, I guarantee.
well, if you all, I think I would suggest that we can put this on a next month's agenda and discuss this in more detail when we can have all this information in front of us.
I think that would be best, yeah.
Yeah. Well, can you explore what we need to be thinking about with the possibility of it being enforceable?
Yes, yes, sir.
I mean, we did spend a bit of time on it.
Right.
and,
Multiple meetings.
Yeah.
Yep.
It certainly would be worth seeing where we needed to maybe tweak any languages, how it relates to the current language in the legislative bills that are pushing around. So, yeah, if you can do that.
Well, yeah,
I'll
because
add
we took, information from other localities,
Yeah,
Nags Head and Duck and formulated, obviously something that we want to be used now going forward, so.
I'll add it as an agenda item and we can have a little more detailed discussion about it. I'm just not prepared to discuss it tonight.
Nothing has really changed with what the planning board duties are, or what our limitations are as far as special use goes.
No, sir. The duties and responsibilities for the board remain unchanged or proposed. We're not proposing any amendments to that.
I did, for consistency, I did see in 32-4, can you pull that up? It was the utilities 32-4. planning board review. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
How do you interpret that, Wes? I mean, planning board review, if that was part of a special use permit that we are allegedly having a forum over, which I have a hard time thinking that the planning board should be up here conducting a forum. But that's what the language says. But if we're having that forum and it says that the planning board shall be responsible for screening all projects requiring wastewater management systems, that would be part of our responsibilities and duties, I would assume.
According to the language, yes, sir, that's what it states, and whether or not that's in conflict with 24-27, I'm not sure. I know the town attorney said at one point they were going to look at this whole chapter and propose amendments to it. Haven't seen that as of yet,
Yeah.
but according to this, that's, you all are responsible for screening such projects.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if it's, it involves a special use permit, you have the other, that section 24-27 to deal with as well.
Well, I mean, I think we as a planning board felt like we kind of got knocked off the block a little bit when, that came out. And we knew that last time when we, had the special use permit for the Gingite LLC. It pretty much neutered us from making any recommendation to town council. But the good news is I got a cousin named David Owens that kind of cuts through some of this stuff. And David, I was just looking through some stuff today from back in 23 and early 24 with that property that we're talking about. And David's suggestions on how to kind of scooch around that forum deal is, I just scratched some notes, but he said, we can, as spokesman for the planning board, the chair can get up and throw down all the hearings, the number of hearings that we've had, the number of people that spoke at those hearings. If you remember, there was quite numerous. And the chairman could say there's been lots of testimony about certain things, and the planning board encourages you, the town council, to carefully consider the evidence that you have received. As we concluded, has an important bearing on the relevant standards for SUP. I mean, lawyer stuff, but he stressed back then, build the record. So I think it's not as much of a slap in the face as we initially thought, that we could only conduct a forum for ticked off people to come in and tell us what they wanted to see. But David said there's ways of getting around it and produce the record without actually making a recommendation to town council, which we are not allowed to do.
Have we gotten any feedback from the Southern Shores, the wastewater treatment plant,
That would be
as far as money being invested in that to?
It collapsed. Half of it collapsed about 2 months ago. And I was told that it was repaired about a couple weeks ago, a month ago, they repaired it. And the person that told me this said they're sure it's going to be raised, prices are going to be raised again. They're paying, I think she told me, $186 a month or something like that, some outlandish amount. And they're all frightened that it's going to go up because he had to repair the collapsed treatment plant.
Okay, so the way this is worded, as far as requirements for the town planning board for a form, does that put any emphasis on us to, have follow-up? I mean, if we have to get involved with these systems.
Well, that, like Wes said, that would be in conflict with what, you know, these, what is this, 2401 says.
Right.
So I think it would be worth getting Lauren to weigh in on, you know, how that would interact with, you know, the ZTA 2401, Wes.
With ZTA 2401?
Yeah, I mean, just check with Lauren and see if that is in fact in conflict with
Gotcha.
32.4.
Well, but where does 2427 live? Is that in zoning or is that in
It's in a.
general code?
It's in general code.
Yeah. Okay.
So in other words, does the town have any say in the future when something is brought up?
For wastewater?
Right. In this case, we found out, you know, some of the dirt that was behind it. And then we also know that it's not functioning the majority of the time. So, and is there, again, and we haven't done any water sample studies around that end of the Gungai Creek. So are we just blindfolded and it just continues to go on? Or because it was brought to us that we are now aware of it? And does our duty then become one that we have to proceed forward to make sure we're safeguarding, you know, the property and the people of Southern Shores?
Well, and I would add the last one, 7, to perform any other related duties that the town council may direct.
Yeah.
Presuming that we have that authority in the code and that meets the, you know, that's rightfully established by state law if there is any, then I think that's the authority.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
are
good
we
point.
able then to send something to town council and say, you know, it's time to check in with Saga and see where this is? I mean, what authority, you know, can we then advocate?
I think we do have the authority to ask questions, certainly. I don't know, and, you know, Ed ran it up pretty good.
Right.
I mean, what did you find? That there were numerous violations,
Right.
DEQ kind of,
Well, that's who
Turned
we
away.
need to ask if they need some help. And because they're the ones that got to put the pressure on the owner and the operator.
well, what's the town's responsibility?
It's regulated by the state,
Yeah.
if you all recall. And at this point, when you all did kind of build a case, when you all considered the last special use permit there that eventually was withdrawn, and you all did build a case, and there were documents, and there were reports from the state. That's when we were considering new development. So as far as what's going on, you know, what all has transpired out there since that time, I haven't seen any reports or anything, so I don't know.
Well, we know from what Tony's saying that their assessment is going to go up because of failure of the system. We know there's a couple properties on the market. This does affect, obviously, evaluation of property. You have people living there, and you have a water source, you know, that's possibly contaminated. So the question is, you know, when do we get involved? And should we get involved? And are we supposed to get involved?
They had a hearing with, about 6 months ago about the increase of price in Manio, and I think it was with the state.
Yeah.
And
Utilities Commission.
it was with the Utilities Commission, and they did grant Gingai LLC a raise, and I said 186. I think it's 136 it went up to. He asked for 180, and they said 130 something, but the current residents are afraid it's going to go up again due to
Sure.
where they had to build one of the walls or something. I don't know what was built, but they had, something collapsed. So they already had their hearing.
Well, I would certainly think it would behoove the town to lean on DEQ, what was that guy's name? Tankard, that came down and did all the,
Robert Tanker.
and just say, look, we would really appreciate it if you would copy us on all action out there on your state regulated water system, wastewater system that happens to be in our town. And I think that needs to come from the town.
Well, the town's got to have some leverage.
Yeah, I think that would be a reasonable condition when considering a special use permit, I think, in my opinion.
Item B here, the second sentence. In case of unsatisfactory operation, the town will institute formal actions with the owner.
What would the formal action be? The owner say, you want to take it?
I have no idea.
I mean, that's the typical response you get on these things.
Did we ascertain who the legal owner was? Because there were several people that were
They
involved.
they
in it.
straightened that out.
They did.
Yeah.
I don't think to me, the thing to do would be to hire a consultant to give us a report on the situation. Does it comply with those things about ownership? Where is it today?
Didn't-
We have town staff to do that, exactly.
Didn't they get the ownership sorted out for the
They got the
new
franchise,
permit, the franchisee
they had all that
And,
sorted, if I recall correctly, yes, sir.
and the permit, the state permit? I mean, it seems to me that got sorted out
Yeah.
a lot better than it was when we were looking at it.
Cliff, do you recall
I'm
anything?
looking, see what I can find now, but they did get
The franchise, yeah, the franchise, all that was sorted out, we do.
Yeah, they got it in one entity. But it's two different entities. There's the franchise holder and then the operator.
Is the operator employed by the franchise holder?
I'm sure he is.
I do know that they've replaced a generator out there. That's one thing they did obtain a permit for. They put in a new generator. And this has been a while, might have been over a year or so ago, but they said that, they were taking steps to have everything replaced.
Hmm.
But it's been a while since I've seen or had any updates or anything on it.
Well, I didn't mean to get off on a tangent away from, the business at hand here, but it is part of a special use permit that potentially we will see down the road, quite possibly from that same property.
Yeah, and if and when we receive that application, we'll be prepared to
But-
present whatever information we have, and that's applicable.
To Jan's concerns, and, I think that as a planning board, we should be able to request some information from the state. I don't know if it would go through town council to do that, but I certainly would like to know.
Just ask Robert Tanker to
Yeah.
come down here and give us a presentation on the current status
Yeah.
of that facility.
We'll see what we can find out and get back to you.
Yeah, that Ed's suggestion would be spot on. Just have Robert Tankard. I mean, we can't force him to come, but
They could use some help. If they think that they can get some help and leverage on whoever has got that system, and that land wants to go with somebody sometime, we should have the current status of that facility. Because even if it was repaired, what's its lifespan? And what are the provisions for maintaining it going forward?
I mean, it's just as much about a special use as it is about an environmental disaster.
That's, yeah.
So,
The
As a
concern.
current residents, special use may or may not come. I'm worried about the current residents.
Yeah.
And if, whether or not they feel adequately supplied with wastewater treatment.
it's working. I've talked to
Did they have
a
any
couple
more
residents
overflows?
over there.
Sewer overflows? I mean, you
I talked to someone that came and spoke several times, checked in with Matt Huban, and he is satisfied with the production of the plant, how it's working. But certainly they took a big price increase and he's worried about more. I mean, but that's not our purview. The utilities side of things, we can't. But I would certainly think.
If citizens are in distress over something like that,
Mhm.
there's language in here that says the town can force an owner, or what was that? What was the word we were asking about? The town may, I forget what it was, but could, go after, or at least confront.
And I'll also point out that I think it was in ZTA-2401 that we were talking about earlier on the screen right here in our site plan requirements. In order to submit a site plan for uses other than, I think it's two-family, single-family and two-family, that no proposed site plan should be accepted by the town for improvements that require a new wastewater treatment facility or connection to an existing wastewater treatment facility, documentation from Utilities Commission certifying that the owner of the treatment facility is an approved public utility, is the utility franchise holder, and is the permit holder issued by the North Carolina DNC-DEQ. All documentation of these requirements shall be submitted with the site plan. And then for improvements that require connection to an existing site wastewater treatment facility, document from NCDEQ certifying that the facility is in compliance with all applicable requirements must be submitted with the site plan, including adherence to permit conditions issued by NCDEQ.
Yeah, and that was in the ZTA.
Correct. That was also after going through that review process, so.
And I think the language is, we did a pretty good job with that language that Wes just read.
Yes.
However, it still doesn't allow for, if that property doesn't get developed for another 10 years, and if that thing's an environmental disaster, how do we know about it? We can poke around a little bit, if we get another special use permit out of it, but how do we know that it's functioning the way it's supposed to function? It's in our town, it's on Gingite Creek. We need to know. I think.
You have the monthly reports, which could be
Yeah.
accessed, but that's it.
Sure.
That's your only information. It's the state.
This is the only wastewater treatment in Southern Shores.
Hmm.
They have them in Kill Devil Hills, in Nags Head, Manio. The question, I'm oblivious as to looking at the records or how their maintenance or how they're running. But obviously other towns have them, and there has to be a system because the towns are related to those systems, right? How are they doing it? Do they get reports from, I'm just asking the question because I don't know.
Well, Ed's been down that road with them. He knows the ins and outs of what the state lets you get by with.
They don't put a lot of money into the operation and maintenance of those things. So if you get one that's properly operated and maintained, that's the outlier.
Yeah.
And it's been a while since I've been around that, so.
But we're assuming that these existing ones that are in these other townships are up and operating and are efficient and not.
None of them are efficient.
Okay,
I would assume that.
gotcha, gotcha.
Michael, how did the town deal with, the town of Nags Head, a private wastewater system?
Usually it was complaint driven. If we learned of an issue, we would reach out to the county and the state, and they usually follow up. And I don't know, sometimes we know what their follow-up was, sometimes we wouldn't. Depends how often we called, I think, right?
There were issues. There was a moratorium at one point, 5, 6, 7 years ago because of that was in the village. The Nags Head village, they couldn't issue permits.
Right.
Building permits because of an issue. They had a rate increase. And that's always we don't have the money. And I'm just looking at some of the information it says. I think the follow-up for Tankard could be, there's not a lot of new filings. This, as of March 11, 2024, they have completed approximately 440,000 in capital upgrades, and upon approval of the CPC in which they've gotten, they plan to make an additional 600 in capital improvements, including 500,000 for back-end replacement of the sewer plant and 100,000 in additions and upgrades. So it's been over a year. I don't know if all that's happened, but they, at that time, they asked for 180 a month and they got 150. And that's what it is
That's
today.
what, okay.
Mm-hmm.
150.38.
Yeah, and it was 90, I believe.
Yeah, it went to 130. I thought.
So where does that money go? Is it just going into whoever owns it in their pocket to mad money, or does it actually get sequestered into an
And
account?
the franchise makes the money out of it.
Mhm.
I think it's their money.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they don't necessarily, who checks to make sure they've got it on hand? If
They
you-
have
Utilities.
financial statements they have.
Yeah,
to
and
file.
we saw all of that. I mean, when you dug up all that stuff, we had extensive filings from them, itemized amounts of money that they were spending on this, that, and the other in that plant. But I still, all that aside, I think that if we could possibly have Robert Tankard come to a town council meeting and just give a, state of the plant report.
When,
I think asking him to answer an email might be easier.
when do you?
Probably so.
When was that neighborhood and that plant permitted, constructed?
Early 90s, I think.
Yeah.
So this was, according to this section came into effect in 1988. So based on that, they should have gotten a permit. And this says that wastewater operation permits shall be issued for a specified, this is under 32-68. Wastewater operation permit shall be issued for a specified period of time not to exceed 3 years. A permit may be issued for a period less than a year or may be stated to expire on a specific date. They have to apply for an extension 30 days prior to expiration. But even beyond that, after the effective date of this ordinance from which this chapter is derived, no wastewater management system shall commence operation until a proposal to establish and maintain an approved monitoring and reporting system, quarterly monitoring reports and schedule, inspection reports. They're all supposed to submit those subject to their permits.
Yeah,
Yeah, and if you recall, they were permitted but in violation,
Yeah.
Right.
which goes on forever.
But this is the
But
town, this is the town's permit.
Oh,
So I don't know what the record and
I
may
think
show.
to go farther down the rabbit hole, I think we were wondering why they weren't paying any tax on county property tax over there on that operation. And once again, I think our big concern without going into a special use permit with that property would be, is that thing working reasonably well? I'm not saying,
consistently, yes, consistent.
yeah, as permitted, because as permitted, sprinklers, the,
Yeah,
Right, and
whatever
what-
happened to the fields and.
Yeah.
And the water quality, is there runoff, is the
Yeah.
water? I
Yeah.
think that needs to be addressed.
Well, we will inquire with NCDEQ, and I'll be glad to share what we find out with you all.
okay.
Can you be more, ask them to make you current with the reports that they get?
We will ask them for an update on what the status of the facility is.
On a regular, in other words, you should be able to look at the town should be aware of how well it's doing its job. If they're every other month they're in violation of a parameter or two, then we should know it.
I know they post the NCDEQ website, that's where they post the reports. They are available there, I know that. And I will note, we have not received any complaints from any of the residents.
Yeah.
So nobody's called, or when you said it collapsed a month
That's what
or
the
two ago,
resident told me.
I know nobody ever called and said anything to the town.
Yeah, afraid.
She said they had a lot of people there working.
Like I said, the only permit we've issued since the special use permit that came through was to replace a generator.
And I don't know if they know that they could call the town and complain. I mean, it's been going on for so long that I think they feel it's the owner and they're complaining to
Yeah.
the association versus,
They don't know the level of fecal coliform in a test well either.
yeah,
I mean,
right.
I looked at that stuff, that's 17,000%
17.
above legal.
Right, I saw that too.
I mean,
Yeah.
it was almost laughable how
Yeah.
poor that thing was operating.
Yeah.
But I think, we, as a town, we need to know, and as a planning board, we need to stress the town to, start getting some information from
Maintaining a.
DEQ, yeah, and maintaining, a database within our town. I mean, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. I mean, how many of y'all have ever walked up there and looked into the retaining pond? I bet people that lived out there don't even look at that retaining pond ever. They might not even know that it's there. Pretty well hidden. Anyway,
Back to the,
yeah. Didn't mean to go off track there, but good conversation. Well, let's get back on the ZTA here. And number 13 is the meat of the ZTA. So does anybody have any problem with any of the additional language that would be reintroduced into our ordinance?
I don't really have a problem with it. I'm surprised that David Owens and the code seem to, it's consistent everywhere that the proposed will be compatible with the area in which it is to be located. That just seems like.
I asked him about that, Robert.
Good.
I did. I mean,
The 8%.
well, what he had to say is that it is subjective. And if it's not there, you can't add it in on the fly. He said, these 4 items that were in, definitely put back in place. And he said, a lot of this is very subjective, but if it's not there, you got problems.
Well, most of them are pretty cut and dry, like injuring the value of adjoining property.
Mhm.
Truthfully, you have to have, either appraiser or real estate
Yeah.
experts,
Mhm.
things like that. It's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
And this one being the only one that seems subjective, I was kind of surprised, but then it does, that way it sort of opens the door,
Mhm.
let people be subjective.
Well, and
And make things unique.
Yeah,
for every
yeah,
town in
and-
this situation.
The language is more submissive than it is, shall and will. But he wrote the thing, and this is dated, it's 2023, which is old news in a lot of stuff. But I didn't find anything that bothered me in there, other than it just seemed kind of loose. But he definitely said, what was it? I started. He said, only those standards specifically listed as applicable may be applied when making special use decisions. Then he had something about ad hoc in there that he said you, I can't. trying to what he was speaking to, but he just said you can't go adding stuff on once the ball gets rolling, so have it in place. Anybody have any other problem with, I mean, the rest of it is all in there. It's been reordered as far as numbering goes, but,
Yeah.
that's it. I did have one question on the very last one, Wes, number 16 in the ZTA. The third line from the end, it speaks about if the time period expires for the special use permit application, it goes back to review by the planning board and town council. Once again, we don't really review or make suggestions to town council. Would that be the right language for us to, if the application expires?
It would be if the permit expires. Let me just make sure, if a building permit and zoning permit are not applied for and issued within 1 year from the date of final approval. So yeah, the special use permit, the development permit expires within 1 year.
Right.
Then they start over fresh. They have to come back to the planning board and the town council,
Okay.
unless they obtain a building permit and zoning permit.
Okay. Anybody have any heartburn about that?
Yeah.
Well, I would entertain a motion to recommend approval of ZTA 2503, send it to town council.
Yeah.
Anybody want to make that motion?
I'll make a
That's-
motion to
One
approve.
question, wait,
Oh,
one question.
sorry.
No, just, that's with the provision of being able to put in there some verbiage about our planning, the architectural planning of, remember we talked about that?
Well, that's nothing to do with the ZTA.
Oh,
That's just a
okay,
side note that
Yeah.
I'll add it to the next
Yeah.
month's agenda.
Okay,
Y'all did that by consensus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve ZTA 2503.
Thank you, Tony. I'll second that. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of Tony's motion to approve for town council to consider? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Okay. Moving right along. Public comment, can we get another T-shirt?
How about pizza?
None seen. Planning board member comments. Robert, start with you. Got anything? Ed? No, I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Michael?
I'll just mention, I think we've had one other meeting, maybe two, of the entrance corridor committee since we last met, but I think the biggest update is we have a survey open right now.
Mhm.
Hopefully everyone's aware of that. And as of right now, we have 296 responses, so quite a bit.
I'm one up.
I'm one of them.
Good, good.
All right, thank you, Michael.
Sure.
Thank you.
Wes, announcements?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next regular planning board meeting is scheduled for June 16th. On the agenda, we've got, as discussed tonight, the status of the commercial design standards. I'll be prepared to address that. And we also have a zoning text amendment application, ZTA-2504, submitted by Anthony S. Mina to amend Town Code Section 36-362B. And also, in addition to what Michael reported on with the Entry Corridor Committee having a survey that's available on the town website, they'll also be holding an open house on May 27th here in the Pitt Center between 5 and 7, so folks can come and go throughout that time to learn more and to, more importantly, provide feedback and give the committee your thoughts and opinions on what the entry corridor committee is looking into. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, anybody else have anything? I make a motion, we adjourn. Could I get a second?
I'll second it.
Meeting adjourned. We're not even gonna vote.